We all have that one friend who loves to talk about how they knew about something before it was cool. Well, today, we wanted to take a look at some developers before they were cool. What did Blizzard do before Warcraft? What about From Software before Dark Souls? All these questions and more will be answered on today's episode, Before They Were Famous. Fortnite has become a household name in the past couple of years. Even my older coworkers know about it because they have kids who play it. They'll sometimes come up to me and be like, "Hey Ryan, do you know about that game Fork Knife? My kids really seem to love it." Right now, it's easily the biggest game in modern gaming. Fortnite was developed by Epic Games, and the game you know as Fortnite was initially supposed to be just a promotion for their single-player survival mode. But before Epic took off because of Fortnite, they were known for some smaller titles, particularly the Gears of War series and Unreal Tournament. There was also a classic PC title that I played as a kid called Jackrabbit. Back in 1994, they were still known as Epic Mega Games. Jackrabbit was conceptualized by Cliff Bleszinski, who greatly enjoyed Sonic the Hedgehog and Mega Man. As with most PC games at the time, the game was released episodically at first, with a CD release eventually compiling all the episodes with some bonus content. I'm playing the GOG release of the collection of all of the episodes. There were 6 episodes in total, with each having 3 planets, with each planet itself consisting of 2 levels, with some secret levels, and the final of each episode being a boss. The story of the game is loosely based on the fable of the tortoise and the hare. Jazz is the hare, obviously, with his main rival being the evil Devon Shell, the tortoise. Since Bleszinski was a fan of Sonic and Mega Man, you can see the influence of both of these titles in the game. Jazz uses a blaster and other guns to dispatch enemies, and he is fast. Very fast. Honestly, at times in this game, he is a little too fast. It's honestly quite impressive that they managed to make a PC game that could run at this speed back in the mid-90s. Since older displays were a lot smaller, it's pretty common for you to run into enemies without meaning to. Because of this, if there are any particularly hard areas to reach, they implemented a slowdown feature that you can toggle on and off in the menu. When I gave that a try, it honestly looked more like the DOS game that I was expecting it to be. The levels in this game were all varied in setting and were enjoyable to go through. I went through most of the episodes and tried out all of the different difficulties it had to offer. It felt like a great retro PC experience. At no point did I think that the game was designed unfairly or poorly. If I died, it was on me. As we know with a lot of older games, there are design flaws of the time and it can be hard to go back to them. I think the best way to sum up how I felt about this game is that it surprised me. I didn't expect an old PC game that I played as a kid to hold up so well and be so ahead of its time. Jazz received a sequel in 1998 and had a Game Boy Advance reboot in 2002 as well, but it unfortunately did not go anywhere after that. I would love it if Epic were to give Jazz a modern rework in between making Fortnite seasons. After Jazz, Epic made a few other PC games, but none particularly stood out. They really began to break into the mainstream with the release of Unreal Tournament and Gears of War. Presently, they are continuing to release Fortnite content, and they are working on a new Unreal engine. For me though, after playing this, I'm going to yell at anyone who will listen that their best series was Jackrabbit.
If you grew up during the PlayStation 2 era, you may remember a particular thieving raccoon with a certain set of skills. Sly Cooper became one of the system's most well-known mascot titles, and one of my most beloved game series. Developer Sucker Punch Productions would maintain a healthy relationship with Sony, with the upcoming Ghost of Tsushima on PS4. Before they were famous, however, Sucker Punch initially struggled to get their first game off the ground. After developing for over a year, Sucker Punch showcased Rocket, Robot on Wheels at E3 1999, which led to Ubisoft showing interest in publishing the title. Rocket, Robot on Wheels stars the titular character Rocket the Robot, as he helps save the grand opening of a futuristic theme park from one of the park mascots. Jojo the Raccoon is jealous of the park's namesake mascot, Whoopi the Walrus, so he kidnaps him and messes up all the attractions in the park. Rocket is tasked with collecting enough park tickets and tokens so he can save Whoopi and the grand opening. So what we have here is a collectathon on the N64. Not very unique given the system's library, but Rocket does some cool things here that make it stand out more than just the cartridge's red color. The game is split up into 6 different worlds that act as the different sections of the theme park. Rocket needs to collect enough tickets to unlock other worlds, and then eventually get through the final level to confront JoJo. Throughout your journey, Rocket also collects tokens that can be given to your other robot buddy, who gives you new moves which you can use to progress. You're able to go through worlds and collect multiple tickets per one visit, which is nice. And there are a lot of random things you have to do for tickets and tokens. The first world alone has a race in a hot dog car, carnival minigames, and a roller coaster builder. The game gets pretty wild pretty quickly, but all within theme, as it is ultimately a theme park. Thematically, it's very solid and quirky. Rocket controls as well as you would expect for an N64 game. He can jump and use a sweet tractor beam ability to pick up and throw items. The camera controls are not the best, but they make a sweet noise when you adjust them. Presentation-wise, the game is very solid and has a lot of content. As a collectathon, I felt it was more difficult than, say, Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie, in the sense of finding out what to do. Some of the ticket locations and what you have to do to get them are a bit more complex. The characters, music, and world are really zany, and that's what fits this game completely. Also fun to note, you can see how Sly Cooper would borrow from JoJo's design. The overall direction and polish isn't as solid as other collectathons, but Rocket Robot on Wheels is still an enjoyable title and worth a play, especially if you like that genre. Its uniqueness helps it stand out against other platforming titans on the N64. I would say that it's no match for Banjo or Mario 64, but it is still a decent title, and impressive as a studio's first game. Rocket Robot on Wheels did receive good press, with Nintendo Power even ranking it as number 18 on their top 20 N64 games for their 20th anniversary issue. Sucker Punch would continue with the platforming genre with Sly Cooper and then with the Infamous series. Sony officially acquired Sucker Punch in 2011 as a first-party developer, and they remain one of Sony's best studios. While they haven't followed up with a new sequel or release for Rocket, you can still pick up the original if you can find it. Just look for the bright red cartridge.
Racing games as a video game genre are as old as dirt, and when you think of a long-lasting series that is still going strong even nowadays, Gran Turismo is one that comes to mind. Well, Polyphony Digital actually made something before Gran Turismo, and it's pretty fun. I find it a bit weird that a company known for its realistic racers had its roots in a cartoony racer. Hey, I'm not complaining, I like a little bit of ridiculousness in my racing titles. Motor Toon Grand Prix is actually the second game of the series, so when it came stateside, the 2 was dropped just like Final Fantasy 2 in the US is actually Final Fantasy 4. In Europe, they kept the 2 in the title even though the first game was Japan only. A little bit weird. Sorry for boring about the title, you just want to know if the game is good or not. Motor Toon was the closest you would get to Mario Kart on PlayStation until Crash Team Racing came out. Speaking about Mario Kart, getting items in this game is just like Super Mario Kart, where you have to run over items on the ground. Well, actually it's more like you get coins and then you can use those coins to get items. That means you can stack up items and then use them all at once, or you can use them as you're getting them. Item selection is what you'd expect with turbo, oil slicks, bombs, and missiles, just to name a few. I have a small complaint with turning since it feels a little bit rubber bandy, but it doesn't take too long to get used to it. Graphically, this game has a great color palette, and the ways the cars lean left and right is funny looking to me. I mean, just look at it. My favorite stage to look at is the one with the transparent road you get to drive over. I can't overstate how pretty the rest of the game is. As a matter of fact, I think the game looks great as a whole. As a relatively early PlayStation game, Motor Toon Grand Prix showcased the talent that was at Poly's Entertainment, the old name for Polyphony. This development studio knew how to make a fun racing game, and it culminated into making the best-selling racing series of all time. After all, most of us play video games because we want to have fun, and Motor Toon fits that bill. The game hovers around the $20 price point, but it can be purchased for $6 on the PS3 digitally, so if you're fine with digital, do yourself a favor and try this game out.
If you watched our Metroidvania episode, you might have noticed that we are all big fans of Way Forward. This developer has become known in recent years for releasing so many quality Metroidvanias and other types of games, including the rebooted Shantae series, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, and DuckTales Remastered. But before they were famous, WayForward hit it big with the original Shantae in 2002. But that game's prohibitively expensive, so there wasn't a chance in hell I was going to be able to cover it. So instead, today I'm talking about another one of their lesser known hits from 2006, Justice League Heroes The Flash for Game Boy Advance. I stumbled across this game at a flea market one day, and being that I'm a huge DC Comics and Flash fan, I couldn't pass this one up. It's one of the 4 games part of the Justice League Heroes series, the others being on DS, PSP, and Xbox. DC thought it would be interesting to try telling a story across multiple games. The only issue with this is that this game ends on a cliffhanger. The story is your run-of-the-mill DC story. Brainiac is attacking the Earth, and the Justice League has to fight against him and other villains. And each game tells a piece of this story. Some of the games are more successful than others, but I think The Flash is one of the stronger titles in this series. The game plays like a 2D beat-em-up, with the player taking control of the Flash, as the name implies, and you travel through many familiar DC cities like Keystone, Metropolis, Gotham, Themyscira, and even Atlantis, to beat up Brainiac's robots and other villain grunts. The Flash has a lot of abilities that make this a really fun time. You have a speed meter which is indicated by the lightning bolt in the top of the screen, and you can spend speed in order to use abilities. You can slow down time, lock on and dash at enemies, and create a cyclone around enemies to name a few. Now while the game might be Flash-centric, it wouldn't be a Justice League game without the rest of the Justice League, so you can call them in for support and deal massive damage to all enemies on screen or bosses. Most enemies are simple to deal with, but there are a few that you have to think smart about before attacking, or they're bound to eat your life away. There are also bosses at the end of each stage, including Gorilla Grodd, Killer Frost, and of course, the Reverse Flash. There are a few extras to play once you beat the main story as well, including a Boss Rush mode, New Game Plus, and the obligatory Who Would Win in a Race against Superman. It's not a particularly hard game, and it's relatively quick to finish, but while it might be simple, the team put a lot of heart into it and definitely did their research. I happened to meet one of the developers of this game at the Limited Run Games pop-up shop last year, and I talked to him in depth about it. He said before developing the game, everyone on the team read a stack of Flash stories so they could pack the game with references and Easter eggs. He even told me about one that I hadn't even noticed until he pointed it out. When you lose your last life, you technically don't die immediately. There's a few seconds before death where if you slow down time, you'll see the Black Flash, and you can kill him in order to get another chance. It's little touches like this that make me really appreciate this game. In recent years, WayForward has become one of my absolute favorite developers, and they've released hit after hit, most recently with River City Girls and Shantae and the Seven Sirens. I hope this company continues to grow, because it would be a shame to lose such a great source of Metroidvanias.
Hey, watch it!
Perhaps the biggest name in massive multiplayer online games, or MMOs, is Blizzard Entertainment. With their masterpiece game World of Warcraft dominating the genre, Blizzard has left a huge impression on the gaming industry, with other titles as well, like StarCraft, Diablo, and of course, Overwatch. Now, most people know Blizzard as the PC gaming developer icon they are today, but before they were famous, Blizzard actually developed and ported games for the Super Nintendo. In the early 90s, Blizzard started out as Silicon and Synapse, and one of their first games before changing their name to Blizzard was Rock 'n' Roll Racing. Published by Interplay, Rock 'n' Roll Racing is a top-down racing game with a serious rockin' attitude. You race around a series of tracks across different planets with a wide variety of characters. In single player, you do various races to earn money and points, which can upgrade your car's stats and weapon capabilities. Depending on your car choice, you get access to missiles, lasers, spike tracks, boosts, and turbo jumps. Your items replenish with each lap, so you don't have to worry about blowing through your items early. Once you get enough points, you can upgrade to the next division and next planet to move on. The game overall is actually pretty fun. Races feel really quick, and despite not really favoring isometric racers myself, this one kept me coming back for more for just one more race. Controlling your car feels great as well. Pressing R gives you an easy-to-use drift option to around corners, and it's very satisfying to deal damage to other racers. The weapons and combat is really what makes this stand out amongst other isometric racers. I tried to prioritize upgrading my car first, but getting more items that cause chaos helped me a lot during the races. The game looks and sounds great as well. Most notably, Rock and Roll Racing is remembered by its soundtrack, having 16-bit renditions of famous rock and roll songs like Paranoid by Black Sabbath, and the Peter Gunn theme, which you may recognize as the theme from Spy Hunter. The game also features a crazy announcer named Larry, who commentates the races. You can turn him off in the settings too, which is pretty funny. I feel this game has some real replayability as well, with not only 3 different cars to choose from, but also the wide variety of racers that have their own bonuses as well. Another huge aspect I really like is the game's multiplayer. You and a friend can go through the campaign together, which is really cool. And if you just want some quick fun, there's a versus mode with fully maxed out cars and all the maps available. It uses split screen and it's easier to see what's going on than you would think. While I feel some of its presentation is a bit stiff, especially in the menus, Rock and Roll Racing still gets the job done in a genre that I generally find unappealing. Rock and Roll Racing was intended to be the sequel to Blizzard's very first game, RPM Racing, which is more of a quote-unquote normal racing game, but publisher Interplay decided to change the marketing and help acquire rights for the music for the game. This definitely made Rock and Roll Racing stand out much more, and I think it's a worthy addition to anyone's SNES collection for its unique setting and fun gameplay. After the release of Rock and Roll Racing, Blizzard released a few other games before their breakout hit Warcraft launched in 1994. Now a titan of PC gaming, Blizzard still does the occasional console release here and there. While they haven't released a racing game since, Interplay did make a sequel called Red Asphalt for the original PlayStation, which was released under the Rock and Roll Racing title in Europe. This title did not feature licensed music and wasn't as zany as the original, but was more of a gritty version of a combat racer. The Game Boy Advance also received a port of Rock and Roll Racing in 2003. No matter which way you play it, Rock and Roll Racing is a fun time with a rockin' soundtrack to jam with.
Rip down to the bird.
This is the Dark Souls of blank. We've heard this way too often when it comes to describe difficult games. The Dark Souls franchise has made From Software dummy money, and their titles received much fanfare prior to release, such as Sekiro. I remember people were losing their minds for a title by From Software. That's when you know a company hit the mainstream. They've made plenty of titles in the past, and although they were the Armored Core guys, From Software was still a niche company back then. When the PS2 came out in Japan, From Software pumped out 4 titles in the span of 9 months. 3 of the 4 titles were launched alongside the PS2 in North America, and the only one not to be a launch title was The Adventures of Cookie and Cream. It came out in the spring of 2001 here, so it wasn't too far out from launch. As you'd expect, you play as a pair of bunnies named Cookie and Cream. Both characters are moved independently from one another using the 2 analog sticks. The shoulder buttons make each character jump and grab items as well. The square button is used to zoom in, but didn't find myself needing to use it often. I tried playing this game by myself at first, but found that to be needlessly difficult. Maybe that's what they were aiming for, but I found it hard because it's hard to concentrate between the 2 characters at the same time. Even when I found someone else to play with, it was still very challenging and I ran out of time several times. This is a perfect time to bring up the time because that's going to be your biggest enemy. You can afford to mess up once, maybe twice at the most, because each time you mess with a hazard such as water or cacti, that carries a penalty of 20 seconds. That might not seem like much at first, but it's going to mess with your time like no one's business. Time can thankfully be obtained with silver or gold watches that can add 20 to 50 seconds respectively. I also wasted time trying to rush things since it would cause me to make more mistakes, thus creating a cycle. The music is quite catchy. It didn't make much impact at first. However, listening to the OST outside of the game and on YouTube gave me a newfound appreciation for it. I know it isn't the best comparison, but the music gave me that Katamari vibe when you hear something so unique. All in all, co-op games are hard to find nowadays, with everything being online focused other than Nintendo titles, and even then, they're slowly transitioning over to online. This game brings it back to the old days when 2-player games were commonplace. As a matter of fact, Cookie and Cream is a 2-player game that can be played with one controller. Underneath the cute exterior is a difficult yet entertaining platformer that is a blast if you can find someone else to suffer alongside you. Just like Motor Toon, this can be downloaded for cheap on the PS3 through the PS2 Classics line. Go download it now.
I would love it if Jazz were to give Jazz... Yeah, let the game make itself. That'll work.